That's right. I've got the motherboard back from the person that I know who can replace or take out the CPU, and as you can see, he did a stellar job with the soldering after he removed it and put in one of these sockets in its place, in which the CPU now rests. And while I was waiting, I decided, why not buy some RAM for this machine, which I suspect might work. I don't know. So this is gonna be an experiment, I guess, to see whether this type of RAM is accepted by this. According to my research, it should be good, but you never know. These machines were not exactly standard. This RAM, I think, is supposed to work with a PC, but should work with this. The architecture is similar enough. So I still need to put in the capacitors, the new ones, and that is the last thing that I need. After which I'm just going to reassemble it and test it. Now there's a lot of things that can go wrong here. I've replaced the CPU, so there might be something where that could have gone wrong there during its travel back and forth. The stress might have broken some of these solder joints. Who knows? So, and of course, I don't know whether my repair of the power supply actually did anything or not. So there's a lot of things that can go wrong, but hopefully everything's gonna work out. So I'm gonna put in the capacitors, reassemble everything, burn an image of the game, and then test everything at once. Okay guys, moment of truth. I've put everything back together and I wanted to test this on video. Now there's about 1,000,000 ways in which this could not work, so let's hope that it will. Oh yeah! There we go, baby! FM Towns. Yeah. So, this is just a fire test, really, because I have not burnt any CDs or anything, so I can't really do anything with the machine. So I'm gonna stop this and burn a game and hopefully test the system for real. So while we wait for the CD to burn, I thought I was gonna talk a little bit about the capacitor hell that I went through. This process took a lot longer than I was expecting, and I actually had to order the capacitors from 3 different places because, or no, in 3 different batches and from 2 different places because I kept making mistakes. I thought I was an organized person, but apparently I just cannot figure out the process of noting down the exact capacitance and ordering the right amount. So after going through all of this and replacing all of this between the FM Towns and my X68000 monitor, I found out actually that the X68000 monitor there, it actually did not need any capacitor change, because all the capacitors in there, at least the few that I did test, were perfect. Like, amazing that after all these years they still held their capacitance so well. As for the FM Towns, I think the single capacitor that had failed was this one. Everything else looked fine except for this one. This looks a little bit iffy, and when I tested the capacitance on this, I noticed that it was just dead. So I think out of all of this that I replaced, the only one I actually needed to replace was this one. But hey, at least my equipment is future-proof now. So there's that. What's up, guys? So this story is not a happy end, unfortunately, because it turns out that this machine has CD reading problems of some sort. I can see that it doesn't spin the disc. I do hear sometimes the laser try to read the disc, but there is no spinning whatsoever. So that could be caused by a few things. I'm gonna have to investigate that further. But if the laser is that, that is it, guys. There is, so far as I know, no replacement, easy to find replacement for the particular laser that is in this. So hopefully maybe I made a mistake during the reassembly, or maybe some cable got or put in loose. I don't know. It could be a million different things. I actually did try a regular CD, just an audio CD, just to see whether it tries to read that as or not. Maybe it was the problem with the CD that I burnt. Maybe the laser needs adjusting. That didn't help either. So there is that. Well, to end this on a somewhat happy note, I should mention that when I remembered that since I'm using an X68000 monitor, I can't just use the regular cable to hook this thing up, because the pinout between the FM tower. So as I was saying, the pinout, the AV pinout between the FM towns and X68000 differs slightly. So it's not a good idea to just take a X68000 monitor and just hook it directly up. So what I had to do, I had to make up a cable that goes in between. I only barely managed to find the necessary parts to do that. It's kind of a patch together thing, but I just forward the pins that are relevant, because the X68000 actually also routes audio and some other things via the pins, and when you feed them into and the FM Towns kind of puts out some other things as well, so you can get like voltages on pins that are not supposed to get them, or voltages that it's not expecting. So it's not healthy to just forward it. So you have to be careful of that. He said, as if people just have X68000 monitors around. So yeah, there is that. Also, the RAM modules that I bought, I actually bought two different ones. Neither of these appear to work. I don't know whether the FM Towns, I think if you put it in, it should just boot into and detect the RAM, because that's one of the first things it does on the screen, is count up the amount of RAM there is in there. So I don't think, unlike the X68000, it probably doesn't need to be configured. It probably figures that stuff out on its own. So I tried both of these, and neither of them appear to work. Yeah, I don't know why. It's kind of a black box situation. There isn't a lot of information available for the FM Towns. So if I ever get the CD-ROM to work, at some point I'm gonna have to look at getting an upgraded CPU for this as well. That'll be a future video if it ever becomes relevant. Otherwise, I just got myself a really nice looking paperweight, which isn't really that bad of a thing. I mean, when you buy equipment of this vintage, especially if you buy them broken to save a few pounds here and there, yeah, that is the risk that you run, and I'm aware of that risk and accepting of it. So, until next time. So, I actually never got to talk about the X68000 monitor that I went through the trouble of replacing all the capacitors for, because I thought the problems it was having were related to that. Actually, it turned out that the problems were not capacitor related at all, and in fact it was just some cold solder joints on the neck board. So how I diagnosed that was, well, I don't know much about electronics actually. only very rudimentary stuff, but I do know someone who is a professional and has been repairing stuff for a very long time, since the 70s, really. So what he advised me to do was take the bottom off and use a screwdriver, obviously the isolated part, or anything else that is not conductive, and just tap around to see which part of the monitor is causing the problem. Because if it's a loose connection, if you tap near it, it will either fix or exacerbate the problem, and that's what I did. And I figured out that when I tapped the neck board, that the problem went away and came back. So what I did was I just reflowed every solder joint on there, and then everything was just fine. As you can see, the colors are crisp. And the picture is super sharp. Doesn't really come out too well in the camera, but this looks freaking fantastic. I love this monitor. I'm really happy that I went through the trouble of importing this from Japan, even though it did cost me a quite a lot of money, mostly shipping, and I had to wait for it for a long time. So yeah, bear that in mind.